This is the Not So Korean podcast. I am Jason Verney. As you probably know, we started this podcast back in 2021 and used to record this live in UK's Koreatown itself. That's an area in and around New Malden. Yes, that's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. These days, we bring you such episodes and therefore information and interviews from various places in the world, including Korea itself. There's a breeze from the trees, from the wind, I guess. Well, it is from the wind. So I'm in the grounds of Jeonbuk National University in Jeonju, and I'm outside a venue where I believe Greta LEE, well known for her role in films such as, well, let's just say Past Lives is the one people think about. And I can't actually get into this screening because it is sold out, and I didn't come to the opening night. I do have a press pass, but press passes are only so good if things aren't sold out, and sometimes they have a wait line, but certain venues or certain screenings they don't, and a wait line or waiting list is, and apologies if there's a bit of wind as I walk around this lovely area, lots of university campuses or campi or campus are lovely in Korea, the ones I've been to. So this is, as I say, Jeonju National University. Anyway, and so it's the actual building of this university is Samsung Arts Center. I think it's also known as Samsung something else center, because I think on Naver it's one thing, and perhaps it's translated to something else. But yeah, so some screenings you don't. There isn't a waiting line where you get a chance to go in. It's not even guaranteed, of course. They wait about 10 minutes. It's quite strict, 10 minutes. Whether the film started, if the film started, and there's still people. There are people that have cancelled or just no shows. People that haven't shown up. You can go in. So if you don't mind missing a bit of the film. And certain films, like the one I went to yesterday, which I'm going to come to, because that was quite a big thing for me upon arriving in Jeonju. Just going with some dried leaves. Regarding an Ahn Sung-ki screening, he passed away a few months ago, really, several months ago, let's just say, and there was a director, LEE Myung-se, who I'd met twice in London, was there. And in fact, I just saw a guy across the street who looked like Ahn Sung-ki, like me, just briefly looking. But of course, he's not. He's passed away. He's dead. He died. So anyway, what I was going to say was some screenings like that one last night. The venue, you can still get a chance to go in. You'll miss the first few minutes. But you'll get a chance to see the film, and you'll get to see the guest visit, a GV as they call it, or Q&A, which I've recently taken part in with my film. And I'm also going to, this particular episode I feel is going to be one of two parts. It'll be one speaking about the Jeonju International Film Festival. After all, I am press here, and also about this year's, just what's happened in day one really of this year's festival. So yeah, going back to that, I'm out here outside, and as you can hear, someone's running into the screening now, bless them. I hope they get in, because they can be funny about things, understandably, but at the same time, if people have got public transport problems and other problems, then it's going to be sad if they can't get in. I'm sure they will get in, they just might have to wait for a few minutes or something. So talking about public transportation, I like the Jeonju buses. I remember they have music playing in some of them, and I haven't noticed that in many other cities in Korea, or maybe I just haven't noticed it. Even in Seoul, I take buses much less, just due to the excellent metro system. But in other cities, I have been using the bus quite a bit. So, but what I was going to say was the bus drivers here in Jeonju, I noticed they are pretty chaotic and erratic, and not great really for especially for someone like me who had an accident in Seoul a few weeks ago involving a taxi and a bus, but that's for another episode. So yeah, I'm not going to this screening, but I'm just wandering around the grounds because I thought it's a great opportunity to record an episode about the Jeonju Film Festival. As I say, I'm press anyway. I've been press here before. Actually, I might have been a festival badge holder, so there's differences. There's 2 or 3 badges that festivals like BIFF, Busan International Film Festival, Jeonju International Film Festival, and there are people that I know who are more, they're proper critics. I have a website, minimovie.com, but, they go to festivals all around the world, and I'm just, really relating to these 2 in Korea that I go to. Korea has loads of film festivals, and, I'm here as press this year, but you can go as one of the other categories is basically filmmaker or industry, they call it. I applied as badge. Different rules, different reasons, but that's what I did. And if you go on my minimovie.com website, you will see that, one of the most recent articles is about that and about the Ahn Sung-ki strand that I just mentioned. And that is a good point to talk about the relationship with Jeonju Film Festival over the years. I'll try to keep this as short as possible, but at the same time I do want to cover certain points. And then I'll touch on my touchdown and arrival in Jeonju yesterday. It was quite surreal, and this has been a long tour of Korea, but yeah, and they're kind of connected in various ways. So, Jeonju International Film Festival. I think I came to this first time in 2013. I haven't been to it as many times as I've been to Busan International Film Festival, which is bigger. Jeonju International Film Festival has always been known as more art house, but not necessarily. It does have things outside that bracket, and also specialising in Korean cinema. Of course, it has international films, as is this one here, directed by, I can't remember the guy's name, but they do have big films here. They do have Korean films, and of course Busan does as well. BIFF. I thought that was them clapping inside, but it was someone with their children on this kind of hanok. Those buildings that you walk up and they're kind of a mini pavilion, I suppose. Yeah, a pavilion. It's a beautiful structure that you walk through to them. I think this is the main entrance of the university, but I could be wrong. And this building doesn't seem the same one that I went to 1 or 2 screenings or events at 2 years ago. And as I say, that and what I just mentioned brings me to the first topic of, the fact that Jeonju Film Festival is somewhere I've been coming since 2013. I've probably only been here maximum of 5 times, perhaps even 4 or 3. It gets confusing. I've been coming to Korea for 15 years. I've been to different cities, different festivals, different reasons. And so I remember meeting Kim Kobe here, who's kind of a friend of mine, but I first met her in London many years ago when I was first getting into Korean cinema, really. I think it was 2010 or 11. And met other people here, Piers Conran, he's a well-known critic and also in the filmmaking world as well. And I kind of had great times here. Maybe Jason Bechervaise and Darcy I've seen in various film festivals. Well, I only go to 2 or 3 in Korea. But Darcy Pakwet, who does subtitles for Korean films, such as Parasite by Bong Joon-ho. He's very well known. He also appears in films. He does other things to do with interpretation or translation or whatever. Sorry, Darcy, if you're listening. But I do meet up with him when I can, and when he can, more specifically, because he's a busier man than me, I would say. Yeah, he is. I think a lot of people are busier than me. I might seem busy, but I'm not that busy, I think. So I've been coming a long time. And then what happened, there was a very sort of prominent event that happened, it was the Jeonju International Film Festival in 2024. Now, there is a Sewol Ferry connection. If anybody knows, I'm an activist for the cause with my lovely friends in London. We've been doing it ever since the tragedy, the incident, the disaster happened in England, every month for 12 years. obviously when I'm there, but they do it all the time. They just had one recently, the 12-year anniversary, but as I say, we have them monthly. But that year, 2024, was significant because Jeonju International Film Festival, because it was the 10-year anniversary of the Sewol sinking, they had 6 films, all from different angles, I think it was 5 documentaries, 1 fiction film, fiction but based upon it in some way, all from different angles and great films. And my documentary, Sewol, sealed eternally with our love. So I basically used the title of the ferry, the name of the ferry, and just used it to say that. But I had created some video art before called Sent Eternally with Our Love, so I thought I'd sort of, top that off with this. And that Jeonju, therefore, especially with 2024 in mind, and some other facts I found out about Jeonju, plays one of the 10 parts in my 70-minute documentary. I specify it's 70 minutes because I want people to know that it's a 10-part thing that complete up to 70 minutes. It's not just I don't want to just say it's a documentary. I want to sort of state that because I put a lot of work into those parts. As an epilogue, that's one of the parts. There's a video art. Anyway, so Jeonju has played a part in my life and in my films. And if you go back to 2024 on miniminimovie.com, you'll see that, I wrote a couple of articles. And from that, believe it or not, Seo Ji-yoon, who I pretty much knew before anyway, she was involved with the creation of the Seoul Whistler Film Festival. And then I became a judge on that film festival. And last year, just five months ago or so, at the time of recording this, 6 or 7 now, I think we're just coming into May as I record this anyway. No, it is May the 1st today. Yes, May Day. It's May Day. Okay. So, then I had a film at her film festival because, we seem to be aligned on what we want to speak about, whether it's in fiction or documentary. We want to speak about issues, even if they're subtle things I'm speaking for myself, even if they're subtle things or very maybe contrived or, very prominent in the story itself, in the scenario. And so, it's a lot has stemmed from those articles that I wrote about Jeonju. They weren't much really, they're press releases and a bit more. But because I was in Korea for the 10-year anniversary, they played a huge part in that documentary, and just not in the documentary itself, but just in that trip. I went to the schools again, the classrooms. I saw a building in Jeju. I don't know if that was the same trip or the one before or after, but either way, a lot happened in that year and the few months leading up to 2024, spring 2024. So Jeonju, they've always been, they're very accommodating. Not accommodating enough to let me in for this screening, but that's fair enough. There are rules. I've made friends with volunteers over the years, 1 or 2, and they're just great people. They're not. When these film festivals happen, a lot of the people that work at them, like in Busan, they don't all live there. I would say, actually, I don't know the numbers, but let's just say 90% are from the city that it's to do with, and then other ones might be involved from other places. And I remember once when I was, so someone I met at JIFF who was working here, and then I think I was somewhere else. Is it Busan? And we bumped into each other. So Jeonju, it really has played a big part. They're very accommodating, lovely people. Jeonju is a great place. As much as I've recently fallen back in love with Gwangju, I never fell out of love with it, but I spent a week there recently, and Tim was there from the Not So Korean podcast, or from, he's an occasional co-host or a beginning co-host when we lived in New Malden, UK's and Europe's biggest Korean community, when we started the podcast. So we spent a lot of time, and then I spent a week in Mokpo. It was only going to be 2 days for my screening of that film that I mentioned, the feature film for the 12-year anniversary. It turned out to be a week there. I didn't want to leave Mokpo. Mokpo was great. Just on that note, I'm not sure if I will include, well, let's just say I'm recording this because of the film festival, so it's in my press capacity, it's in my mini-movie.com capacity. However, Not So Korean Podcast is kind of a press thing for me, as much as it's a Korean related thing. It's still, podcasts can be press, so I'm kind of in here. I'm recording this. It could be released as under their F.L.I.C.K.S podcast, which is Jason Verney F.L.I.C.S. That's a completely different thing. It's not about just films. It's F.L.I.C.K.S. They relate to various things in my life. For example, K relates to Korea, L relates to life, music, film, etc., etc. I can't remember exactly, and I don't want to bore you. Maybe interviews. I think that's what it was. But also maybe I'll put this out on a Not So Korean podcast. It's just that I've already got some episodes for the Not So Korean podcast that are forming themselves. They are like, I'm creating series 3 in the background now by arranging interviews, recording 1 or 2 episodes already for that. So I don't know if this one's I think this needs to get out sooner, and therefore it's under that. So that's enough about the Jeonju International Film Festival in itself and my connection with it and my film and all that stuff. But the second part is my arrival here, and I went from lovely Busan and Songjong Beach. I stayed in Songjong Beach area, practically on the beach. You can see the sea, and you're literally a few steps to the beach. But either way, a lovely part of Busan. Didn't want to leave, but excuse me. But in the same way, not in the same way that I didn't want to leave Gwangju or Mokpo, because it's a beach. I've got lots of friends in Busan, not as many as Seoul, but I wanted some alone time, and I hadn't really planned what I was going to do in Jeonju, apart from get the press pass or some kind of pass and come here. So I took a bus. Lots of reasons for that, and going to that in another episode. But it was a great journey. Korean buses, or coaches as we call them in England, very good. And I went from a great place. I arrived, checked in, had some debates with the person, let's just say I don't know who they are at this point, about the coldness of the room, even though it was, afternoon. I wasn't expecting heating to be on and stuff, but that's for another episode perhaps. Went from the frustration of that, then I went to go and pick up my press pass. So now it was like early evening. I went into Jeonju Film Street, where people call it Film Street or Yonghwa. I can't remember the proper name, but it's where CGV is, where Megabox is, where a sort of a special 2 or 3 buildings relating to Jeonju around the corner from that street. They also have 100 posters, 100 films. It's something they do every year. Have done for a while anyway, maybe forever, I don't know. No, I think it was a relatively newer thing. So that street has lots of posters from lots of films, and it's called a Film Street. Now, I'm not near that right now. As I say, I'm in the university area, and I suppose anyone who knows Jeonju, if you live in Jeonju, then you'll know that I'm nowhere near that. I think I looked up on Naver, it's like a 53-minute walk, so it's a bus away, really. And of course, this city, unlike Busan, unlike Gwangju, doesn't have the metro. Actually, when I was in Gwangju, I think I might have only used the metro once in those days, because the bus was more convenient for where I needed to get to. So I arrived, got my press pass, wasn't sure what to do. I was trying to find out whether there's a screening room for people like me, press, to watch films, because that is the case with Busan International Film Festival and other festivals in the world. You get like library rooms, and you can sit down and watch a film. You don't have to go to the screenings. I can't say for certain that all the films will be in that, because they obviously there's probably reasons, and also copyrights and stuff where perhaps certain films they won't allow that. I might be wrong. I'm not a film festival programmer. They could be 100% there, or they could be 90% of films. So I don't want to say too much on that topic. What I will just say on that subject, though, is that I also run, just seeing as we're mentioning podcasts, I haven't done an episode for a while, but it's the MBF Micro Budget Filmmakers podcast, and I'm saying that because there's one or two guests I've interviewed who are to do with film festivals, and there's probably more coming up. So I just wanted to mention that one's, it's another podcast that I do. Sorry, I'm just trying to be quiet and away from people here. Lovely. It's so warm. I've got my coat on. I've got my press badge, of course. I've got my Itaewon badge from the terrible Itaewon disaster that happened. The Sewol Ferry tragedy badge. I've got my Sewol Ferry ribbon. I've got my Thailand t-shirt from a musician I like called Warren. And got my Bali, I don't know if you're interested in this, an Indonesian scarf, or it claims to be Indonesian. It was due to a Busan International Film Festival. There is a Korean connection to this. A couple of years ago, I had a Indonesian night, and they gave away these scarves, so I wear it. Anyway, so what was I saying? So I arrived, I was looking for that building, that place. I just thought, I want to get my bearings. I don't necessarily want to see any films last night. I had to call my mum as well. It's something I've been doing a lot lately because I'm going back to England about a week from now, and literally a week today. And I'm going back partly, mostly because of her, and I've been calling her most days. It's just something, I've been away for 10 months in Asia. I've got siblings in the UK, but, Anyway, I'm rambling about that, but, so I went there, and then I suddenly realised, because I hadn't really checked the programme properly, I hadn't even booked, the festival started the day before, like the opening night film was on the 29th. I wasn't too bothered about that. Partly because, there's the press thing. They're not going to allow every press member into that. And also, I wasn't, although it had Greta LEE and the director from the film and other people, I think maybe the jury members would have been showing their faces as well. Im Sun-ri, I always get her name wrong, but she's a brilliant female director. She's been around for decades in Korean cinema. She might have been there. So yesterday when I arrived was the first day and first full day of films that were playing, but I wasn't bothered. I didn't get much sleep the night before. Another reason for that. That was I'll just be. It's nothing like. I just wanted to be up. I wanted to have a coffee early enough. I wanted to walk around Songjong Beach before I kind of took the bus. I didn't want to kind of have a coffee just before the bus and all that kind of stuff. I thought, let's have a nice fresh day and do that, get it out my system, literally, and then get on the bus. And so I had a long day. I felt tired. But as I was in that building, on that fourth floor, asking a couple of questions, I suddenly saw that that's where one of the Ahn Sung-ki, he's a very, very famous actor in Korea who passed away recently, as I mentioned. One of his films, Bitter and Sweet, was playing. Has a different title in Korean, as the director, which I'll come to in a second, told us last night. Well, obviously I knew certain facts about this film, but so what I'm trying to get at here is that I saw that film was playing. I hadn't eaten either. I needed another drink, a coffee or some liquids, and I thought, I would like to see this film. And also they told me, again, this comes back to the wait line or the waiting list or the queuing. If there was nobody else queuing, and there wasn't even when I went in, there was just me. So they said, it's not sold out. No, it's not sold out. They have different rules. So even if it's not sold out, press don't get first say. Of course, people get, if somebody turns up or 10 people turn up and they want 10 tickets, you don't get priority over them. Why should you? So if it's sold out apart from 5 seats and 5 people turn up to want those seats, And also there's rules about allocation for press. So, press, even if there's seats available, you still have to do the wait line. You're not given the privilege of having one of those. There's a different ticketing, system for press and things at Jeonju, as there is at other festivals. So this is a bit long-winded me saying this, a way of me saying this, but I decided to see that film. I thought, okay, I'll do this. I'll see this film. It's 2 hours. There'll be a Q&A, guest visit. I wasn't sure if the director was going to be there. That is Lee Myung-se. Lee Myung-se, and I've interviewed him twice in London. Anyway, I was getting the lift down, elevator, as they call them over here. And I was coming out of the elevator. He was walking in. I recognised him, and I wanted to say something. I didn't want to walk back in the lift just to go back up and say hi. So I kind of looked at him, and he saw me, and he remembered me. He went, oh, and I remembered obviously him. I think I said Myung-se instead of Mr. Lee, but I went, oh, are you? Maybe a stupid question, but are you doing the Q&A and are you introducing whatever? He went, yeah. And so there was other people in the lift, so I said, okay, I'll see you afterwards. And I thought, oh, this is brilliant. There's me deciding on the spur of the moment to see this film, which, as you'll see on minimovie.com, you'll see that part of my post about Jeonju this year, Jeonju Film Festival this year, JIFF, was that, that strand was one of the things I'm most interested in. Obviously, when reality hits you and the days and deciding what to see, it doesn't mean to say I'm going to see all of those films by him, and one or two I would have seen anyway, I'm sure. Can't remember all of them. But I went away, went to a cafe, got a coffee. I asked them if I could take in drinks. They have different rules, different venues. You can't take alcohol in, which was absolutely fine with me. I don't drink these days. And you can take in coffee. And I thought, right, I'm getting a coffee. It was late already, but I just needed one after my tiredness day full of, worn outness in some ways. And I needed something to eat, and there was a cake in the shop, and this lovely lady just near the venue in that part of town, she said she gave me something else, another sweet service, like free. So they say service. And it happened again today. Someone else gave me like what they call a fancier, one of those little sponge or whatever things. So I got that, went back. I did my due and waited in the queue, not to be rhyming all the timing. I waited, and they said, because they pretty much said, you'll get in. And so I waited, and I went in. I watched the film. Now this is what this part of this podcast is about. I'm not going to do a full review, and obviously I did miss the first few minutes, but it was very Lee Myung-se style, the vivid colours, the effects that he likes to use. If you've seen Nowhere to Hide, classic Korean film, or M, that's one of my favourites, or it was the Blue in You, somebody else. And I don't know, he's made, I think they said he's in the Q&A, which was an hour, by the way, which was brilliant, and it was, we had our own personal translators. That's another thing that happens in these Korean film festivals, and I'm sure other film festivals in the world, certain ones, if not all. It definitely hasn't happened every JIFF. So there's been screenings. It's annoyed me in the past, even 2 years ago, when they said there'd be a interpreter and nobody even asked. So we just have to listen in Korean. My Korean knowledge should be better after all this time being interested in Korea, but it's not enough to listen to a Q&A at all, nowhere near it. And so I watched the film. Yeah, it was it was a very slapsticky comedy film, bitter and sweet, and it who's it? Park Sang-min. I don't know if I got the name right. If I've got it wrong, I'll put it in the description of this episode. He was there for the Q&A. He was in the film, obviously, a young guy at the time, and yeah, the film, I loved it. It was broken into days of the week. It was a lot about women, men. I think somebody said it was because it was the mid-90s, 1995. It was when lots of women movements in Korea were happening. But the film was very funny, very crazy, lots of music, lots of montages, I suppose, and also homages, and he confirmed that at the end. Dance, singing in the rain. There was a part where that was talked about, and but he does feature rain quite a bit in his films, I would say, Lee Myung-se. And I just think it was a lovely, it was a silly film, but it was apparently it's one of Lee Myung-se's least well-known films, and that's another reason for seeing it on the big screen. But also in the Q&A they mentioned that I think out of all of Lee Myung-se's 8 films, it's the only one that was still on film, still not been digitalized, restored or etc. And they did mention that part of that reason, and I think they were talking about another film, maybe by another film that Ahn Sung-ki, let's not forget this is his Strand, this is all films dedicated to him. Maybe it was another film, or the general's son or daughter. There's a very famous general's film. I wasn't sure in the Q&A whether I was getting interpreted right. The woman was great. She interpreted for me another guy who I realised at the end of our trip, he spoke pretty good Korean to her afterwards. I thought, that shows me up, so I can't really speak the way he did. But he obviously, the translation, always helps if you're English. Interpretation. She was brilliant, but she might have, I don't know, she did a very good job. I'm not going to put her down. And I don't know whether I misremembered the title from last night, if I misremember, or... So what they were saying was that certain films that haven't been digitalized or made better in some ways. I do like the film, the scratchy things you get on it, and they said in it actually there's some scenes where it looks like it's raining, but it's because the film is spotty like that, or I'm using that word spotty, but scratchy. If you've seen a cinematic film on film or 35mm or whatever mil, and it has those marks, and that's why, so. But they were saying the reason it hasn't been, another one they were speaking of, because not always, and that film in particular last night, they don't always know who has the copyright, because these films were done under a studio, a company. It doesn't exist anymore. So they were saying even showing it at JIFF, there was certain risk of doing that. So that was quite interesting, because I knew that certain companies disappear over years. It happens in Hollywood, it happens in the UK, it happens in Korea. I think it happened even more so, because we are talking, the Korean film industry has changed so much, and not to sound like an old man, but I do like the older films, and they were more original, and I like these films. And it's also a great way to see, even if it's a slapstick comedy, to see how things have changed, how trends have changed, how people have changed, how faces have changed, how dress code has changed. Even if it's a film and it's fiction, and especially this film, there's going to be lots of vivid colours that perhaps weren't reflective of people's real everyday life colours and fashion. But I think it was it wasn't completely made up. It was, I just think it just teaches you a bit about Korean history. I'm not a scholar, I'm not an academic, I'm only interested in tiny parts of Korea, tiny parts of Korean history. I'm not someone that's fully involved with it. Even if I do specialise in Korean subject matters, I pick things, and that's what I want to know about. If I know a little bit about something, I don't go into details of what, why, etc. But I really wanted to just say that the film was very funny, silly but funny, and also, the colours and the transitions, and like even the days of the week that came on the screen. Each one, Monday to Tuesday, whatever, they're all done in a different style each time. So Lee Myung-se, he does things the way he wants to do them. Now, his films might have changed over time, but that's what he's a good... Was it him that made King and the Clown? I'm trying to remember now. But he has a certain maybe that was Lee Junik, I forget now. But he has a certain style. That's why I like his films. He's a good guy, I think. As I say, I interviewed him twice. You can find the interviews on my website. 2012 and I think 2018, and I've got a couple of photos where he's sitting on the same red seat, and I've also got a couple of photos where me and him and I are sitting on the same seat, and it's like two selfies side by side, 6 years apart in interview time. More years apart age-wise, I should probably add. Yeah, I wanted to do this justice and do the Jeonju International Film Festival justice. And, they were really helpful last night, the volunteers or the staff, because there's a mix of volunteers and staff probably, but there is. And, they're brilliant here. I've not even done 24 hours here yet, and I haven't even seen a film today. I'm just taking it easy. As I say, I was hoping to see that other film. I might be seeing Lawrence of Arabia, which is split in two with an interval, but it also clashes with some music I want to see with an artist collaborating with Lee Min-hee. She's a brilliant artist, used to be in Muki Muki Man Manzu, but she's also does a lot of soundtrack music, hence she's here, I suppose, because it's to do with film. That she's playing the music from, I think, 2 shorts. And I just wanted to say this. I'm not sure if I've really relayed my first night's experience of Jeonju, but afterwards I spoke to Lee Myung-se, because I thought, after all that, me going out of the elevator, him going to say that, if I didn't see him at the end, I've got to do that, and the other actor, But also they did, I've just remembered as well, they did speak in the Q&A about the cinematographer who worked on a few of those films. And and Ahn Sung-ki worked in about 5 of his 8 films. I think that was the rough number, or the exact number. And Lee Myung-se, he's also made a documentary which is regarding Yoon Suk-yeol, the, what's it called, the martial law situation, but he's screening that in Gwangju, maybe at this very time or in the next day or two. So he's going down there, which is funny because I've just not long been in Gwangju, and that's sold out there. So he's he's a fiction man, a bit like me. I am a fiction person first and a video artist, and I do have made a documentary, but it's kind of, I don't really know what I am. I guess he also runs, I should say this, the Sewol Eco, is it International Eco Film Festival, or the other way around, but that's a film festival that he's curator of, or part curator of every year, or he's the founder of, maybe, in Seoul. So that's a big thing that he's chosen to pursue in more recent years. So even being involved in that, you've got to say hopefully he is the good guy that we all think he is. And he is, from when I've, liaised with him, I would say he is. So I spoke to him afterwards. The actor was there. We got a few pics and all this, and we spoke a bit about, I mentioned, because we were speaking about Gwangju, and I spoke about Chung Ji-young, because I've recently seen his film about Jeju 4-3, the massacre in Jeju, which was, as it's as sad as the Gwangju situation, but it was bigger, or at least what happened was, the Gwangju thing, things were happening like that in Seoul, but it was still terrible. It was still awful for Gwangju. But with Jeju, it was a different thing, a different ball game, although it did revolve around sort of accusations of communism and other things, and the Americans and governments at the time. Again, I'm not going to go into that now. So I don't know which film I'm going to see next. I might hang around here for the Q&A if they let me in for the Q&A, because they mentioned that. They said, well, we can't. No, the line thing here is you can't see the film no matter if there's seats left or not, but you can press. There is a wait line for the Q&A, the guest visit. So I might go and grab some food, and then I might attempt to go back in, if only to start seeing Lawrence of Arabia, even if I have to leave that halfway. It's just a shame this is a bit of a distance between the other places. But there is a shuttle bus, but I haven't seen it around, and it's in my booklet I've got in my hand here, which is the 27th Jeonju International Film Festival, 29th of April 26th to the 8th of May. I'm leaving the 7th of May. Again, I don't necessarily want to need to be here for the final film. I don't need to be here for anything. But I'll go up to... I'm probably going to go up to Seoul on the 7th. And I'll have one day or one evening in Seoul. And then I'll be off to the UK, Jeonbuk, England, UK. GB, Great Britain. Not so Great Britain, whatever. So sorry about all the ums at the end of this. If you've made it this far, then that's fantastic. But if you haven't, I don't blame you for that either. So yeah, it was a great evening. It was all a bit, to me, it was very important, and you can tell that I was very enthused maybe to talk about this, because it was, for me, it was all happening. And I met a guy who's a film director here of many years, and I often bump into him in that Busan International Film Festival. Oh, and speaking of Busan International Film Festival, a couple of people I know in Busan are involved with the Busan International Short Film Festival, and I arrived in Busan on the day that was starting. But again, I was exhausted from hanging around with people in Mokpo, but having a great time, but also my screenings in Mokpo and attending events that that were to do with the Sewol Ferry in Mokpo. So when I went to Busan, I almost did go to see at least one of the shorts, or a strand of shorts. I even went to Loop, part of the Loop art thing that's been going on in Busan. And my friend who I'd mentioned in an episode before regarding Daegu, she was in Busan because of Loop. So we met up, and then when I was at Loop, I met a guy who's always at Busan International Film Festival, which is in the autumn, which I'm more familiar with. And he said, because he's curator for certain parts of the Busan International Short Film Festival. And I said to him, I'll try and make that one tomorrow. And I just couldn't seem to catch up on my energy. I don't know if something's wrong with me, but, or maybe I'm not having enough sleep. I'm not switching off. I'm not getting things done. So I'm not really people think I'm really busy, and I am. But there's also days where I do nothing. And there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose, but I feel guilty to myself sometimes. So yeah, okay, well, that was that. And I just thought I'd mention that because we're talking about film festivals. So the Busan International Short Film Festival, and I also met up with Naughty Muse Studios and Anna, who I've interviewed on the Not So Korean podcast before. I also met up with James Turnbull, who I've interviewed on the Not So Korean podcast before. You can look that up if you want. And I also thought I'd mention, because cinema has been a little bit part of this trip, which started in Seoul and started with my other video stuff as a part of an exhibition. 3 clips of my video arts in Itaewon area, or Noksapyeong, Haebangchong, I forget which one it is, Yongsan area, Seoul. So it's been a very filmic journey. Even if I've been down at times, I've been wondering what I'm doing here. And, I've had breaks. I've been to Sokcho. And also Mokpo was, film related. And, Gwangju, I went to see the old country's oldest or second oldest or oldest single screen cinema in Korea, South Korea. So I've done a lot of film stuff, and I think sometimes it's exhausting. I just want to make my films, and I'm not getting down to it. I start writing a script, or I'm editing another thing I'm working on, some video art I'm working on. I get inspiration all the time. But film festivals like Jeonju International Film Festival are a great place for that. I also bumped into a guy last night who heard me talking about Sewol Ferry. He was really enthused and interested, and he's based in Busan. He's a cinematographer of sorts. I think that's what he said. we've kept in touch. So it is a great place to network, but I'm really not overdoing it on this. Last week was the calm before the storm with Busan. You know, I call this the storm because I thought I'd be hectically running around for films. I'm going to the Mike Figgis screening tomorrow of a documentary he made of a film, the Francis Ford Coppola film, which was not a brilliant success recently, but he's made one, Megadoc I think it's called. But there's a masterclass afterwards. So we're coming back to film, we're coming back to making films. I've got his book, and I went to his masterclass in London where he broke down his film time code for 2 days or 3 days in London. It cost a lot of money, actually. I was new to London, and it was Mike Figgis. I love leaving Las Vegas. And I think it was 2007 or 8 or something. And I wouldn't mind speaking to him tomorrow if there is an opportunity, to thank him for that, but also just, to somewhat compare notes. But I am nowhere in that league. Although he's an interesting filmmaker, he doesn't sort of buy into the commercialism or the use of certain things in the filmmaking techniques. He invented equipment for doing film shoots and stuff, and he's an interesting character, I think. Whether he's aligns on all my things that he agrees with, things that he agrees with, or whether or not it aligns with everything, because there's certain things I might have heard that I might disagree with. Okay, that's a long episode. I'm out of breath. I'm out of hydration. I'm walking around this beautiful entrance to this university in Jeonju. It's wooden. I mean, it's clearly new wooden structure of like a huge Hanok style palace kind of building. And that's the thing with Jeonju. I mean, just not to see films. There's a lot to see, and and I'm just going to shout out once again to my Not So Korean podcast, or the No So Kopo co-host Timothy Home, who was talking about fleetingly coming maybe to Jeonju. I was also talking about tying up somewhere with Philip Goman, who's really been my, not muse, but really my, someone I've looked up to since 2011 or something, or who's in Korea right now. But we all seem to be missing, it just hasn't worked out with where we are at the time we are. But Tim, I met him in Seoul, had this accident almost around that time, met him in Gwangju, met him in Mokpo, and then had some time of my own, which was, no offence Tim, but much enjoyed. But I still met one or two friends while I was in Busan, just didn't do a lot of events. So this is a bit rambling, and that's what these podcasts are. If this is the Jason Verney Flicks podcast, then that's what this suits. And if it's a Not So Korean podcast, well, it could also fit in with that. So maybe I'll put it on one and then the other. Okay, I really appreciate you listening if you've got this far. And I'm going to keep creating, whether it's this, whether it's... I do all the thumbnails for these videos. I do all the, everything that goes alongside, all the recording. Of course, well, I don't have to say of course, but I do self-record a lot of the time. Excuse me. And I've gone as far as... I just got to tie this on the end. Yesterday, on my way from Busan to Jeonju, I was thinking I was wearing a couple of garments or items from my Hmong friend, Yen, in Chiang Mai, where I spent a lot of my life, Chiang Mai. And she's Hmong, so we're pretty close, but she creates things. I help her out with her shop sometimes. She creates this shirt that I wore, and there is a film reason I'm saying this, and a necklace pendant thing that's made of a Hmong coinage currency, and a bag that I carry, a laptop bag, and film-wise, there's me talking about Korea, Chiang Mai, and England, and Hmong. It's another project that I want to focus on, it's got nothing to do with Korea as such. You could say it has if you talk about China, Mongolia, you know, it's all connected. But the Hmong people are everywhere in the world, you could say. And what I was also going to mention was I also design, as I say, I help her out with her shop, whether she... there's a big sign that I made for her for the top and the bottom of her shop, and hopefully she's already put one of them up, but she's going to put the other on. But again, it's stuff that I get involved with designing, that is nothing to do with my film stuff, nothing to do with my podcast stuff. It is to do with my travel side, of course. But okay, that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening. On whichever podcast you listen to this on, 안녕히 계세요. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. So that's all from us. 안녕히 계세요.